Every few days, Marius Dasianu stands in front of a mirror, struggles to put on shaving cream, and shaves the hair on his nose.
His nasal reconstruction was a 3-stage procedure. We borrowed the skin from his forehead and brought his scalp down to give him some skin to cover it. And the part that he has a little bit of hair on is actually the part that's crept up from his scalp.
This is only one of the many things that make Marius's life unique and different from any other boy, and also makes his life very special. Marius was born in Romania, an old country with a busy capital, still stained with reminders of its communist past. But Marius grew up far from the busy streets of Bucharest in a small village outside of Galatz. Marius was just a normal 8-year-old boy who liked to have fun. He went to school, played with his dog, and helped his family with chores around the farm. But on one cold December night in 2007, Marius's life changed forever.
They were
at our home, across the road, until 9 o'clock. When I said goodbye to them, I came home and went to bed. They went back to their house to make some food for their dinner.
That night, the alcoholic father sprinkled gas on Marius and his mother and set them on fire. As the flames reached the furnace, the house exploded. Marius miraculously survived because he had an instinct to jump out the window. A little boy broke that window and jumped out over there. When I came here and saw them on the floor, they were all singed.
I was careful going into the house. I went into the living room and I found Marius's mother. I have never seen anything like that before. She was kneeling on the floor. She had her head on the bed. She looked the same as she would if she were just being born. All of her clothes had burned off and she was naked. She was completely burned and I thought she was finished.
A small ambulance came to rescue the family, but with room for only one. The ambulance took Marius to the hospital. Marius's mother and father both died the next morning. It took the ambulance more than 2 hours to go through the Romanian countryside and reach St. Maria's Children's Hospital in Iași, where doctors did all they could to save the boy's life. The fire left Marius with 3rd and 4th degree burns on more than 75% of his body.
But Marius is really lucky in that you could perfectly see exactly what he had been wearing when he was burnt. I guess he liked to sleep in underwear because he had a perfect whitey-tighty line on him. And then he was wearing a t-shirt and you could see the collar line and the sleeve line.
I asked the doctors and the nurses, does he have a chance? And they said, sir, if he lives for 7 days, he may have a chance. And if he doesn't live in these 7 days, his life will be short.
Marius's 2 blue eyes poked through the seared flesh on his face as a reminder of his former self. From his ankles to his waist and all down his arms, Marius had severe burns with almost no living skin. The injuries were so bad that he went into a coma for his first few weeks in the hospital, and while he slept, the doctors did all they could to save his life. First, they sliced strips of skin from his back and grafted it to his badly burned legs. But the doctors couldn't save everything. The flesh from his hands had so much infection and damage that the doctors amputated all 10 of his fingers, leaving Marius with tiny paddles instead of hands. The flames burned away his nose and seared his eyelids to the point that he couldn't blink. Every day, doctors put a special gel into his eyes with the hope that he would keep his sight. When Marius finally woke up, his whole life had changed. Marius couldn't blink. He had no fingers and a face without a nose. And with no parents, he was alone. But Marius wouldn't be alone for very long. He still had his older brother and sister who weren't home during the fire. And Marius was about to meet 2 new friends who would change the course of his life forever.
When we went into his room for the birthday party, he kept saying like, "Madware pichwarele, madware pichwarele." And we didn't speak very good Romanian at that point. And also, he had the trach tube in his throat. So everything he said was like really muffled, So it was just like, "I'm sorry, what?" Like, "I don't understand you." But then his sister was like saying like, "Oh, his feet hurt."
It was just worse than what I thought it was or what I ever thought it could be. And this little boy and just his little head sticking out from the hospital bed.
It hurt Ashley Ludlow and Jessica Free to see this little boy in so much pain. The 2 students from Brigham Young University came to Romania on an internship program. For 4 months, they volunteered in an orphanage and in a hospital. Their goal, to help children overcome severe developmental challenges. They quickly grew to love all of the kids they worked with, but there was something different about Marius.
It was a little heartbreaking. Also knowing that he didn't have parents was hard too. So he's put in this situation where half of his body is gone or destroyed and his parents are gone.
And one of those things would be like hard enough, but the fact that he was dealing with both of them was just like really hard and made us really want to help.
Even so, the nurses didn't trust the pair and weren't sure that Marius should either.
Well, they told me that there were witches and try to go to sleep. After a while, I kind of give up because they're like sort of pretty.
Once Marius finally started warming up, they found it easy to connect with him.
And we watched movies and they have balloons and we can play with balloons and it was a lot of fun.
It was one of my favorite times of the day was just to bring the laptop in and watch Tom and Jerry. It was great for him because it didn't have any words, and so he would just laugh and sit and watch this cat and mouse go back and forth. And
we were there for him, and he totally could have taken advantage of that, but he was like totally thinking of the other kids first.
And there was another little boy in the room, and one time I remember, I think he wanted to listen to music or watch a movie, and the other boy wanted to do something else. And Marius was quick to say, "No, it's okay, let him listen to the music, like, I'm okay." And that happened multiple times where he would share the things that we brought in for him.
As Ashley and Jessica got to know Marius, they saw the burns on his face begin to fade away. After a few weeks, they barely even noticed his scars anymore. But that wasn't the case for everyone.
There was this one kid that was just relentless, and he's like, he's calling me a monster, and I hate him. And we're like, you just tell him that you have 2 American girlfriends and ask him what he has and just make him jealous. So we were probably not the best thing to do with a kid, but we thought it might help him a little bit, and it did. So like after that, he just always called us his 2 American girlfriends.
He liked having his girlfriends around, and he made sure that they knew it too.
He would be like a little punk and like smack me and Jess in the butt and different things like that, like things he thought were so funny. So we were such pushovers. He could like do anything he wanted or ask for anything he wanted, and we would just totally do it.
He likes to express, I guess, his feelings. And I guess he needs to hear from someone that is loved, and he is loved.
Jessica and Ashley saw something special in Marius. They weren't quite sure what they could do, but they knew they had to help.
That we all had thought, well, maybe it'd be great if we could do something.
We just need to help his appearance and everything because people here are so judgmental, and we don't want him to have to like live like that.
So we all emailed our moms, and Ashley's mom and my mom were
we're more than willing to help.
The emotions that were elicited at that point were just, we need to save, we need to help, we need to rescue, we need to do whatever we can to make this not be the end for him.
Their parents formed Team Marius, a team determined to bring Marius to the United States where he could get the better medical care he desperately needed. Jessica and Ashley helped as much as they could.
Ashley and I got the fun part to just be in Romania and play with Marius while they were doing everything else.
But to communicate better in Romanian, they needed help. So they drafted Teo, a woman who quickly became one of the backbones of the team.
She's Superwoman, Romanian style.
Ashley and Jessica came over to me one day asking me if I can help translating. They insisted to pay me, but I said that Marius needs the money more than I do, so I wanted to become a team member.
As things started moving, the team quickly realized if they couldn't find a way to pay for Marius's medical care, chances were he wouldn't be coming.
In order to start anything, we had to have somebody agree to treat him.
The Shriners Hospitals for Children, a nonprofit organization, has satellite locations all across the United States. The hospital gives free medical care after they accept a child as a patient. A perfect arrangement for Team Marius, considering some of the life-changing operations performed here can cost more than $500,000.
Basically, the only prerequisite for treatment at Shriners is that we actually treat your condition. We don't base it on financial need or anything like that. So to be treated at Shriners, it's just a matter of applying, and our doctors will see you, and they'll be able to tell you, from the exam, they'll be able to determine if they're able to treat your condition, and then if they are, then you're accepted here at Shriners.
Each location specializes in different types of care for children, and one of the specialties at the hospital in Los Angeles is burn reconstruction surgery.
So Children's Burn Foundation asked us if it would be okay if they walked over Marius's application and casework to them. And we said sure, it would be great. They explained that Shriners had a much larger orthopedic division than they did. And so we said sure, and then it wasn't but a few weeks after that, tops, that Shriners came back immediately with an absolute yes, affirmative.
And so to celebrate, the team in Romania threw a party.
I had called Teo and said, we'll get McDonald's for anybody and everybody who's in the room with them. And it was so much fun to get the pictures the next day, and there's little McDonald's soda cups in their hands.
That was like the best meal ever, because I never got to eat McDonald's before, but now I don't like McDonald's anymore. I'm done.
Things started to fall into place as Team Marius, on opposite sides of the world, worked to get this small, disfigured 9-year-old to the U.S. Back in the States, Marius's story quickly spread. With articles and radio interviews, the team started getting more of the financial help that they needed to help Marius.
But they say it was the birthday celebration of a young orphan boy named Marius that will forever mark the moment in time when the needs of another became more important than their own wants and needs.
The news reports touched people of every age, people who wanted to help little Marius start a new life.
And I saw the picture and I was like, that's weird. And so me and my friend were like, let's make a lemonade stand to earn money for him to have his surgery.
And inside was a check for $1,000. $1,000. And this is an elderly couple living on, a fixed income. So they figured that, it was meant to be. He found his hearing aid, they saved $1,000, and they sent it to.
But not everything was as good back in Romania. The doctors at the hospital were concerned about Marius's emotional health, and so early on in his recovery, they decided not to tell Marius that his parents had died.
The nurses thought that would be too hard for him to handle, to hear that news, and they thought it would hinder his healing. So they told him that his parents were down the hall, and that they were burned and everything, but that they were getting better too, and so he couldn't see them.
It made us really sad, and it wasn't our place to tell him that his mom had died yet or anything. And
so it was really hard when he would say like, hey, have you met my mom, and things like that, and we're just like, you know, like our focus is just to be here with you.
When Romanian Mother's Day came, it got even harder.
I asked Ashley and Jessica for a flower, and I asked them to bring one so I can give it to my mom.
Ashley and I both knew that his mom had died, and we didn't know what to do, and it really just, it hurt our hearts a little bit, and
we didn't feel like it was our place to like go against the nurses and go against his family's decision to not tell him.
And then my aunt came and told me, and then I was really sad. I couldn't eat. I stayed under the little fort for a week. I cried for a long time.
It was really hard for him to accept. He said that the mom was the only person that really cared for him, and what will he do from now on? I said that we will be there for him. He still has Ionuț and Alina and me, and Ashley and Jessica and everybody who worked in this process. And I told them that we'll always be there for him, helping him, and we tried not to let him down ever.
And Teo wouldn't let him down. To help him feel better, she read Marius messages from people all around the world who admired him and his courage. People who loved him, supported him, and wanted him to be happy. Eventually, Jessica and Ashley's internship in Romania ended, and they had to say goodbye and go back home to the United States.
It was tough. It was hard. We had spent, every day with him for the last 3 months, and that was special. Knowing that there was a pretty good chance that we were going to see him again kind of helped me to cope with it, and I had hope that he would come and that I would see him again.
Soon enough, new interns came, and it took some time for him to warm up to them, but it wasn't very long before he'd found some more American friends.
It's kind of at first, I think it was a hard transition for them because he'd become so attached to them. But he always was really considerate, like even when he stopped talking about them as much, whenever he'd list things he was grateful for or whatever, he'd always say their names. And always Lynn and Kristen, who he didn't even know, he would always say their names because he knew what they'd done for him.
With Marius' sense of humor, Elisa Bushman didn't find it hard to fall in love with the burned little boy.
He'd always tease me and say I had a huge nose. Just say I had a huge nose, and he'd always go like this, like a Pinocchio nose, like your nose is huge. And he'd always tell me I had a huge nose because he didn't have a nose. And one day I was teasing him and I was just joking, and I played the game like I got your nose. And then he was laughing really hard. He's like, you do have it, it's gone. And he's like, and you got my fingers? And he was just, it was so funny about it. He was just that he could joke about that.
To help forget about the pain and help pass the time, sometimes they played cards. But Marius got more interested in the Nintendo DS for Melissa. Marius loved it so much that sometimes he would play it till his nubs started to bleed.
And then every night I'd go home and I'd take a Q-tip and I'd clean off all the dead skin and blood on my DS so it would be clean for the next day. And he just totally loved it. And it was a huge thing for him. He'd never seen something like that before.
But not everything was fun in games. On occasion, Marius gave the interns a brief look into his past and the family he no longer had.
Once Marius was talking to us about his mom, and he was saying that his mom was a flower. And he kept saying that his mom was a flower, and that's how he described her. But it was really sweet because afterwards he's like, and you're a flower, and Marcy's a flower, and Mindy's a flower, and Melissa's a flower, and Ashley's a flower. And then he named all of his people that were flowers, that Lynn and Kristen were flowers, and everyone that had helped him. And that I think for Marius, in a way, she's not gone because he identifies her with something that's always there.
So Marius figured out last week that he can move his thumbs.
As the two became closer during their visits each day, Elisa started to see the person that Marius is on the inside, all by how he used his small little hands.
Then when I got there, Marius was just so overly concerned with the fact that I was sweaty and tired and my bangs were like plastered to my head, and he just kept taking his little nubs and he was just like rubbing them across my bangs to like make my bangs look prettier. But he was rude and said I did not look pretty, but it was funny. But that was just a big thing that I learned from Marius, is just like, I guess, how to care about people way more than you care about yourself.
Marius slowly gained strength, first by rolling himself in the wheelchair and by exercising in the hospital. Then, more than 6 months after the fire, Marius made a giant leap in his recovery. For the first time in months,
please help me.
He got out of bed and walked.
And it was a great day that day. We were exercising every day, to make his muscle, stronger. He was a little ashamed to stand up and to let everybody else see his legs. But he got over it and he made his first steps. It was awesome.
But that didn't mean that all of Marius's problems were over. If he had any hope of leaving Romania for America, he would need a new guardian.
We needed someone to legally represent him. So we needed Ionuț, or someone in his family, his aunt maybe. That was a choice. But we preferred Ionuț to go to the States with him.
Marius's older brother Ionuț was working in Italy when the accident happened, and by the time he got back to Romania, his parents had already died. While doctors worked in the hospital to save his little brother, Ionuț buried his parents here in this cemetery.
It was really hard for him to deal with all that, because one day he had a family and the next day he had no parents, and the brother was in a coma. He said he couldn't eat for about 10 days. It was really hard for him to go through this. And he was only 18 years old.
Because I just talked with them a few days ago and I knew everyone is okay. And after 1 month I would see them, but like not talking and not be prepared, like say goodbye or whatever. So it just disappeared.
Between visits to Marius, Ionuț worked to rebuild the damaged portions of his home, and then he lived in it to show the government that he should be Marius's guardian.
Ionuț still, he didn't bat an eye at the fact that he'd have to give up his life. He totally had to stop everything that was going on in his life for Marius's life. And that for Ionuț, it wasn't even a question of if he should do that or not.
The interns helped Ionuț look the part, and a judge appointed Ionuț as Marius's legal guardian. With everything falling into place, the next step was to get Marius a passport.
Going to make passport, to get a passport for Marius. Marius?
The group took a taxi, which couldn't have made little Marius any happier. He got to ride in a car and actually see the city that he lived in for so long.
He was very excited to get out of the hospital for the first time in 6 months.
That was the best day out of the hospital, because I got to get dressed, put actually clothes on for the first time, and go out and drive in a car for the first time.
And it dawned on me, Marius had never been in a city before. And the whole entire time he just kept saying, look at the trolley, and I just had forgotten he'd been in the hospital room. But even before that, he was in the country and had never been to the city. And it was so funny to watch his reaction. He was just grinning. I've never seen him smile like that. He just could not stop smiling. And he was so happy. And we went to a park after we got his passport, and we sat in the park, and he wanted to keep running at the pigeons in his wheelchair.
The team had almost finished, but in many ways the last hurdle felt like the biggest. Teo and Ionuț took a train to Bucharest so they could try and get visas to enter the United States. They couldn't wait to tell Marius the news.
Ionuț was so happy. He started dancing in the street and singing, and he was extremely happy. And right after that, he called Marius and said, Marius, we are going to America. And he said, yay, we are going to America.
When it was finally time to leave just a few weeks later, Marius was so excited to come to the US and ride in an airplane that he almost couldn't contain himself.
Like looking down all of these things, it was like really cool. It was like the ocean and you could see everything.
He kept saying, Teo, I can't believe that we are going to America. And I'm so excited.
When we started flying, he was like so excited. He started jumping and do that in the chair. And the airplane was like kind of like, when first go up, go like this. And when he was jumping like that, I said, Marius, don't jump anymore like that. He's like, why? Well, when you jump, you make the plane going down. So he let to keep the balance to go up. And he's like, oh, okay. So he kind of be careful with his balance.
After 6 sets of batteries and a full day of travel, Ionuț, Teo, and Marius finally made it to the land of the free and the home of the brave.
There was just so much excitement. We had been waiting for a while, and so it's this international flight coming in, so they have to go through customs. So we're waiting, and Ashley's family is there, and my family is there, and we're just excitement and joy and goosebumps all over. And
amazing, overwhelming, oh my gosh, he's here. After all this work, he's here. And it was a lot of work, and he looked so small.
I can tell you he was the shyest I've ever seen Marius. He was a little overwhelmed. So many people there, and everybody wanting to hug him, people he'd never seen before that were complete strangers.
But that shyness was gone within a couple of days. He was loving my mom, he was loving Ashley's mom, he was loving all of the kids, and just the newness of everything.
Marius wasn't in the US for very long before the team started meeting with doctors to make a game plan for helping Marius get better. But his new doctor at Shriners said that they needed to start by taking a time out.
And he was the one that totally said to us, take him and go play. He's been in a hospital now for 8 long months. He just needs to be a little boy. Nothing is so severe or so serious that it needs to be taken care of. And I think that's when the decision was just made for all of us that we would just go. And it was just, I think, the most wonderfully therapeutic thing and the most incredible advice that any of us could have ever received.
And it was amazing to watch them kind of come out of their shells.
But the quieter activities at home, like jumping on the trampoline or slip and sliding, made all the difference.
It was a special time, and I think that the little things were some of my favorite things in getting to know him and watching him experience those things that he hadn't been able to experience for so long.
And though sometimes it was hard to communicate, the team grew to love Marius. And even with the language barrier, they knew he was happy and in the right place.
He said, so Bud, are you happy? He said something and I didn't know what he said, and then Teo interpreted for us, and basically he had said, how could I be anything but? 9, he's just 9 years old. How can I be anything but? With this little pad rested on my shoulders and scars up to his shoulders and, down to his toes, and how can I be anything but?
Teo used a year's worth of her time off from work to bring Marius and Ionuț to America. And so as the team's month of fun came to an end, Teo returned home to Romania, and the brothers moved to Arizona to live with Dave and Kristen Free's family.
It was really hard to say goodbye, but I knew that he was in the right place with the right people.
After 9 long months of stress and hard work, life finally started to settle down for the team. the Free children stepped up to lend their 14 hands to help how they could. In some ways, they became his primary caregivers and also his best friends.
It was fun to be able to interact with him a lot. And we had to have lotion on all his legs, his hands, his arms, because the skin was so dry, and so come in here and do that every night.
As time passed, Marius and McKay became best friends. McKay loved Marius, and Marius completely trusted McKay.
And he was on his bed, and I come in and he's just crying in his pillow, and he says, "I miss my parents." And just that he wanted to see him again, and he'd see him in dreams, and he would wish they were real and stuff. And so we'd sit and talk about it for a long time. So he definitely missed his sister a lot, but other than that, he was glad to be here. So.
One of the most interesting times of the day for Marius came during meals. With no fingers or hands, Marius relied on his new family members to feed him. After a while, Dave designed a wrist brace that allowed him to eat and even write, all on his own. But that didn't mean that he always used it.
Instead of using it, he just took it off and went ahead and put his pencil between his two hands and started writing. And I said, "Marius, don't you want to use that?" He goes, "No, it's okay, I'm fine." So it was just the entire time I had him in my classroom. He didn't want to be treated any differently than anybody else. He would figure out a way to do it on his own.
And he definitely didn't need any extra help making friends.
He just would make you laugh like all the time. And you'd always, if you're around him, he would just make you so happy.
Abracadabra! I am Marius.
While his friends and family went to school, Marius learned how to use his paddles to play on the computer.
I think he was bored and he would sneak away to do it. You could tell that there was this little creative guy in there just, dying to get out. But you know what? I think those vignettes totally say everything about him. His ability to look at himself in an incredibly altered state, not to even have a single moment of apprehension to be in front of this camera that he knows is taping him.
Sometimes he even did magic tricks for his audience.
Hi, good morning, Sister Brothers. I have magic tricks to you to see. 1 second. It's just this box, it's nothing. I'll put this thing, I put inside in the box. Sit here and make it disappear.
But while Marius became a pro at magic, he couldn't make the fact that he was behind in school magically disappear.
Disappear!
So he started working with a home tutor and going to school for part of the day. To help prepare the students for their new classmate, the school talked to them about Marius' story.
It was actually quite funny because at the very end, after she told the kids about Marius and showed pictures of what Marius had gone through and him in the hospital bed, the only questions that they came up with was they wanted to know what happened to his dog. My class was that's what they were most concerned about. It wasn't that Marius looked any different. It was just, what happened to his dog? Does he still have his dog?
Marius picked up things pretty quickly, and while he practiced his new skills, he went back to the Shriners Hospital for Children in Los Angeles. The doctors hoped to fix his eyelids and hands, so he would be able to open and close his eyes for the first time in almost a year. While he recovered, the doctors sewed his eyes shut, so the new skin on his eyelids had time to heal. Doctors also made cuts in his paddles so they would be ready for the surgeries he would have later on.
He just got a bone removed from his hand, and so he couldn't use his hands at all, and he didn't like that because he likes to touch stuff, he likes to go do stuff, he doesn't like sitting around. It bugs him when he's bored.
Through everything, he did have some moments.
He's still a kid, and sometimes he gets grouchy and moody, and sometimes he can be demanding, but for the most part, he's just sweet, and he is positive and optimistic and loving.
And never complaining about how much it hurt or how he couldn't see. But then again, no one could really see what would come just after Christmas, when Marius' brother told him he'd fallen in love.
When Marius found out I'm gonna marry one of his girlfriends, he got pretty jealous and shocked.
But Marius wasn't the only one to be surprised.
Ashley goes, "Okay, Mom, we've been kissing." You and your nudes? She's like, yeah. I'm like, oh, haha, funny Ashley. I thought she was joking.
They had been, I don't know, just a little bit flirty and stuff, and so I kind of had seen it, but when she called me and told me about it, she told me that they were just dating, and so I was like, oh, okay, you know, like, that's cool, and then like a week later, I heard my mom say, yeah, and they're gonna be engaged.
I thought it was adorable that they were getting together. You know, how can you not love your nudes? I think that was the biggest surprise in the whole affair.
So while Marius's brother and ex-girlfriend started planning a wedding, Marius returned to Arizona and to school, where it wasn't very hard for him to fit in.
I was just amazed at how fast he picked things up, how fast he was part of our class. I mean, 1 month he's just joining us for PE and music, and then the next, after the winter break, he came and joined our class full time, and it was just like anybody else.
During his first year of school, he went back for another surgery to finally get a new thumb.
It was really gory looking, gruesome. He's looking at it, and he's got these wide eyes, and he's getting this big smile. And
I was like, oh my gosh, this is the coolest thumb ever.
He may have lost a toe, but he didn't lose his sense of humor.
He liked to just tell jokes about it, like, I can put my toe on the back of my head, I can put it up my nose, he's just all these jokes about it because he had a thumb and that was a toe.
While it looked a little bit different, he was happy he could give anyone he wanted a toes up.
He came in for our Christmas party. He says, I have a present for you, Mrs. Young, and he handed it to me, and I unwrapped this little package all wrapped up, and he and his aunt had taken a pen and little modeling clay that was the color of flesh, and they molded it around the pen, and then they took a fake pink fingernail, a hot pink fingernail, and stuck it on the end, and Marius said, I got a new finger, I wanted you to have one too.
Cause I got my new thumb, and I guess they'll be like matching almost.
Just a few months later, Yonuts and Ashley got married, and while Marius lost a girlfriend, he was happy to gain a sister. But with the wedding, the team had to decide where he should live.
When they got engaged, then that changed everything as far as Marius' situation. You know, if there's gonna be a real life family connection here, it's best for Marius to come and stay with us.
You know, Lynn and I had talked every step of the way, this isn't about us, this isn't about us, and I had to finally get to that point where this wasn't about me, this was about him.
Here he comes, first day on the bike ever. Looking so proud.
You know, they really do mold you and children in general, and that molding had already started to take place, and so knowing I'd have to give that up had to really be countered by a definite knowledge and understanding that this was the right thing for Marius.
With Yonuts as an official part of the family, Marius went to live with Ashley's parents, Lynn and Paul Woodward, in San Diego.
I knew it was coming. I knew the heartache and this had been my little guy for a whole year. I mean, we're not talking a few weeks, we're talking an entire year. And you know, it didn't take him but a month, perhaps, to start calling us mom and dad. And so the next year was pretty painful, but we figured it out.
The adjustment wasn't easy at first for Marius either. For the third time in less than 2 years, he had to completely restart his life.
When Marius came here, he was a little hesitant and kind of shy, and we explained to him that he would be a part of the family unit. He would become a brother to the rest of the kids. That he would share in an inheritance someday when Lynn and I pass on. And of course, he's probably not too happy that he has 10 other brothers and sisters that he has to share that with, but oh well.
He had only been in the U.S. for a little more than a year. Team Marius had fallen in love with him, his hands, his jokes, and with Yonuts in the family, the Woodwards began the international adoption process. But it's not that simple. Romania is closed to most international adoptions.
And the reason for that was that it was considered that the child can
stay in touch with his national roots, with his heritage, that it would be easier for him to make a transition to, the family who adopted him if they're in Romania, and so on and so forth.
So the family decided to start by getting Marius a green card. As he settled into his new life, the old Marius that everyone grew to love began to shine again. Just a few weeks after moving to San Diego, Marius ran for school student vice president.
He put posters of himself, pre-surgeries, all over the school. So we'd work on his speech, and he got up and allowed himself to be videoed and gave a speech like, yeah, I'm cool, vote for me.
And he won, with the largest majority in the history of the school.
He's funny, he's witty, he's smart. The kids like him. They, he'll walk through the campus. I call him a Rockstar. That's his nickname. I gave him after the first couple of days because it was always, Marius, Marius, hi Marius. I said, you're the Rockstar.
But right as he got used to his life in San Diego, it was time to go back to Los Angeles for another surgery at the Shriners Hospital for Children. This time, doctors give him a new nose.
He essentially had the majority of his scalp on his face, covering part of his face for 6 to 8 weeks. He had dressings that he had to do every day, and they were wet and kind of sloppy, and he had to wear this big headdress.
Because there wasn't any other easier way to take it. Because my head grows hair, so now my nose grows hair because they cut the skin off.
When Marius went back to school, he was still a bit behind, so the school hired a tutor just for him.
He struggles academically in a couple different areas, and I do believe that a lot of the things that he has issues with are because English is a second language for him.
And while he says he likes school, like many other kids, his real favorite subject is recess. Marius figures out how to adapt himself to his world because he isn't interested in letting his life go by when other people think he can't do something. He finds he can do a lot of fun things with just one finger on each hand.
Oh, look at that. It's a beautiful shot.
No.
I had to laugh when he told me he was going to take trombone lessons because, and without me even asking, he says, well, I can't do the valves, so I got to do the slide.
And because Marius loves to wrestle, he started taking karate.
Karate is being able to be the best person you can be, whatever your situation. So that doesn't preclude anybody. Right? So why can't Marius? Because he's got thumbs on his hands now, whenever he punches somebody, I say, no, don't kick him, punch him.
But it wasn't a kick or a punch that would matter when the Burn Institute of San Diego asked him to throw the first pitch at a Padres game in the spring of 2010.
So we worked on stepping, we worked on getting that leg kick up, we worked on how he can generate power from his legs, and gradually it went from 10 feet to 15 feet to, okay, we're playing catch 20 feet away. And at that point, I kind of knew, yeah, he would easily be able to throw out the first pitch.
Marius says he feels like a normal boy and says that he almost looks like he would if he'd never been burned in the first place.
Looks like almost the same, but I mean, like, my nose is like a little much bigger, but I'll grow into it.
And when he dresses up for Halloween, most people can't even tell that he's burned.
His burns have affected his life, and they are a part of his life now, but he doesn't let them stand in his way.
I didn't know they're gonna do this much, and it's really awesome.
Marius loves his new life in America, but his family isn't quite complete. His sister still lives in Romania.
He doesn't know Romanian anymore. We still keep in touch, but only in the sense of, how are you? Are you doing well? I love you, and that is it. I miss him very much.
Hundreds of people helped Marius before and after he came to the United States. His parents, his teachers, the neighbor who saved his life, those who donated money to help him come to the United States, and his many doctors and nurses. But almost every one of them say what they got back was worth much more than what they gave.
He doesn't dwell on the past. He doesn't say, oh, woe is me, and oh, look, I have, this disability now. Not at all. He just goes for it.
It's all based on outlook and your outlook on life, and he teaches me that, outlook is everything. You make life what you want it to be.
Marius has been through everything. This is a little thing for me. Why can't I just have a good attitude about it?
It's like I don't see him, and then I see him, and he makes me feel like the most important person in the world, except if cartoons are on, then he doesn't care about you.
We'd had people constantly tell us, you guys are doing so much for him. This is just such an awesome thing. And we'd just look at each other and go, no. We're the ones that are receiving every, blessing. We're the ones that are the lucky ones, not the other way around.
Marius is like my youngest brother. I feel so close to him, and he always will have a special place in my heart.
Like a phoenix rising from the flames, Marius's life is just beginning, all because of one choice.
Marius made the decision to live. He was willing to fight for his life.
So he keeps smiling, no matter what happens in his life. In some ways, it even makes it so that the people around him don't see his scars anymore.
Honestly, you don't see his burns any longer. You just see Marius with his beautiful blue eyes.
I didn't know it was going to turn this good, but it's really good. Look at my balls. Oopsie daisy. I'm also my fingers. Oh yeah? Oh yeah. And that the fingers. Yeah. It's beautiful. Beautiful. Oh, I love you, honey. And my eyes. You can close both of them. Yeah, you.
Winners never quit.
Winners never quit.
Quitters never win.
Winner never
win. So I choose to be a winner.
I choose I share a winner.
Awesome.
Yeah, baby, you love a winner. Now you look at me, baby. Oh yeah. Good. Whoa, yeah, you rock. Hey, you brother. What you want from me? I have more magic tricks to show you. Probably you want to come here. I'll show you magic tricks. Okay? Have a good day. Probably somebody want to come. Can come.
And it's $1 to come inside. And to show magic tricks, it's $1. Same. Have a good day. Okay, have a good day and sleep well tonight. Bye.